Hello and welcome to Aqualine Vinyl Sales. This movie is for professional installers to show specific techniques for Aqualine products. We always recommend our products be installed by trained professionals, and in fact, our warranty coverage does not extend to products that are not professionally installed.
The home we're working with is 25 years old and ready for some updating. The carpenters are removing the existing railing and deck. The railing was fastened without having to puncture the vinyl membrane, and we'll do the same this time too. You'll want to have one of our heat guns for sealing the seams of the vinyl, and a seam roller. You can either buy or rent these. A decent hammer, a pair of snips, and a utility knife are essential, plus you'll probably want a selection of other everyday tools. One of the first things is to cut back the home's siding. We want to be sure we can extend the vinyl high enough to prevent water from getting in behind, and 2.5 inches is the minimum you will want to extend upward. The carpenters have put down new tongue and groove plywood, an ideal surface on which to place vinyl. In fact, our products are warranted only for installation on new plywood. We still need to get fascia boards on, then we'll trim the plywood flush. Even though it is tongue and groove joints, it's a good idea to sand the seams just to eliminate any high edges. This doesn't have to take long, but you'll want to get rid of the dust afterward. Next, the Aqualine leveling compound, which can be mixed in any pail you have handy. We recommend you add the water to the dry powder. You'll develop a feel for what it should mix like, but generally you're aiming for the consistency of mayonnaise. The compound goes on pretty easily. Work quickly though, because it's designed to set up quickly. It's usually ready within about an hour, and today it'll be faster because it's hot and dry. We've got 2 people on this for speed. You're filling seams. You don't have to worry about small things like nail head indentations.
It's a good idea to use new flashing wherever possible. The existing flashing on the right's in good shape, but with all the old glue on it, you don't have the same assurance of a good adhesive bond.
Start at one corner of the deck with the flashing and go all the way around. This first piece reaches to the deck's outer edge, so we'll bend the piece to get it around the corner. First, nick to mark the corner you want to make. We're going to cut it at 90 degrees, then 45 degrees. We'll have a nice overlap when it's bent into place, and the overlap will be a great nailing spot. A single cut on the drip edge and bend. Just check to ensure it's bending in a straight line. Use lots of nails, one every 3 or 4 inches, and it's not a bad idea to alternate between inside and outside along the flashing's top edge. Overlap the next piece of flashing a bit rather than butt join it, and carry on all the way around the deck until both outer and inner edges are flashed. If we had any inside corners to flash, we'd do it this way: straight cut, then a notch with 45-degree cuts on the drop edge. That will allow the inside bend. Gives you a nice, neat look where they come together, doesn't it? It's time to quickly remove any bumps on the leveling compound. Scraping is fine. Sanding is also an option. You will want to make sure that all the loose material is gone. Now we're ready for vinyl.
We're working on an L-shaped deck, and there are a couple of ways we can plan to lay out the vinyl.
You have to make sure to overlap a few inches on all sides. If we plan to cut the vinyl this way, it'll make the fewest pieces, but we'll do it this way because it's the most efficient, minimizes waste.
And you have a choice of adhesives. Latex adhesive allows you to move the vinyl when it's in place, but it can only be used when the weather's warm and dry. Contact cement doesn't give you so much latitude to move the vinyl, but it can be used when the weather's cooler.
We're using contact cement on this job. We had the pieces pre-cut and pre-glued with contact cement. We're measuring for a chalk line to show us where the edge of the first piece of vinyl should go. Now when the first piece is brought up to the chalk, it'll cover the flashing on the outside, and there'll be enough to go up under the siding on the inside. Once we have the vinyl positioned, we'll pull it back to expose half. For this sheet and for every sheet, we'll glue first one half, then the other half. Contact cement usually needs to dry for a few minutes after it's applied, but because this is a hot day, there'll be no wait time. In fact, we're going to have to work fast so it doesn't dry prematurely. Make sure the flashing is completely coated. It's very important to get a complete, even coat everywhere. It's like paint. You don't want it too heavy, but you don't want any patches with no adhesive. Too heavy takes longer to dry and may not be as strong. Now we can bring the folded half back and onto the glue. There's a little give here. We're going just off the line so we can pull it back and reposition even though this is contact cement. But you can only do that right away and only once or twice. Some people use heavy rollers to flatten out the vinyl, particularly with latex glue. But our crew here prefers their hands because they get a better feel for the surface and for any imperfections they may have overlooked. Press the vinyl down over the flashing. With the contact cement, it'll stick in place. Notice the knife blade has been retracted. Now the knife is a great tool to press the vinyl into the bend on the flashing. Now as we pull back the other half, we'll pull it back far enough to expose the glue from the first half. We'll brush it on here to make sure we have a good coating in the corner and up the flashing. Again, an even coat of glue. And we'll fold the vinyl forward. The felt-like backing helps the glue do its job better, and as we'll see, it melts as we heat weld the seams.
Don't get too worried about bubbles, air pockets under the vinyl. If you've put a complete even coat of adhesive on both the underside of the vinyl and on the plywood, the bubbles should disappear, although it could take a day or two.
We use the knife edge without a blade again to ensure contact in the corners. Then we go along and press the vinyl against the sheathing under the siding. Same thing where the vinyl meets the bottom of the siding. Press it into place with the knife blade retracted. Trim at the sides. We'll be caulking this in a few minutes. At the corners, we'll trim so that one side overlaps, and in a few minutes we'll weld it. We'll want to run our knife to trim right along the flashing as well. It's kind of awkward, but you need to get right down close to the deck so that you can trim the vinyl up where we trimmed off the siding at the start of the day. Second sheet of vinyl. This one will be notched for the L shape of the deck. Fold it back so it's not bunched around the notch area. Now he uses his thumbnail, gauging about 3/4 of an inch for the overlap, and he'll check it all the way along. When they applied the glue to this sheet of vinyl, they made sure they left the 3/4 inch strip free of glue so that it can heat weld properly. Next, they notch the other side before gluing. What he's going to do next may seem odd, but it's the way to do it. From the point where the L shape of the wall meets the deck surface, he cuts the vinyl up at an angle. Then trim with enough left to fold up under the siding again. Be careful not to cut the newly placed vinyl underneath. Now they can fold back the first side and glue. Again, they make sure no glue gets onto that 3/4 inch edge so the overlap will be welded properly. Also, they mark the trailing edge so they know how far to extend the glue when they glue the second half. They'll do this with every sheet of vinyl. The vinyl bunches in the corners, and the secret to handling it is to cut it back bit by bit. First, he'll tuck the vinyl into the horizontal corner. Rough trim the excess just to get it out of the way. Now he can see where to more precisely trim. Pull it out and cut it off. He's cutting an overlap which will be heat welded later. The vinyl for the rest of the deck goes down pretty much the same way. Every deck should slope away from the house, and vinyl seams can be a factor. On this job, we ran the seams in the same direction as the slope. Had we chosen the other way, care would be required. We would put the outside vinyl on first so that with the next piece the exposed edge of the seam would be on the downward side. Slope, by the way, should be 1.5 inches for each 10 feet of width, so water runs off and doesn't sit in puddles on the deck. Now another critical step, welding the seams with the heat welder and roller.
It's just the speed of the weld. You have to make sure the felt is melting off the back surface of the top piece of vinyl and sticking to the bottom piece of vinyl. It's all in the speed and the heat.
The heat welder has a heat control, and on each seam these guys will do 3 passes. One to seal the inner edge, one to seal the upper vinyl to the lower vinyl, and a third to seal the exposed edge. This is the first pass. He has the gun well inside, and he rolls the upper vinyl snug against where it meets the lower vinyl. On the second pass, he moves more slowly because he has a wider surface to cover, and he wants a solid weld right across the 3/4 inch span. If you find little bits of vinyl bubbling up, ease up on the heat a wee bit and scrape the bubbled vinyl away before it hardens.
So you have to make sure you're going fast enough so you're not burning through the vinyl, but slow enough that you're actually melting it to the piece underneath.
And here's the third pass. He's going slowly, firm pressure, getting a perfect seal at the edge of the seam. Now, here's how he seals that corner up underneath the cut siding. He heats the fold and presses it in. Not a bad idea to wear gloves for this until you get to know what's hot and how long you can touch before it starts to burn. Then he seals and rolls the seam's edge. And on the outside corners of the deck, much the same thing. Apply the heat and stick one edge over the other. Notice he tucked the upper edge right here so the side of the vinyl isn't exposed. Now when he goes back to roll and seal the edge, he'll take extra care and use a little more pressure, flatten out the tuck so it looks good and is perfectly sealed. Now this corner patch. It's cut in a triangle, just a little bigger than the exposed triangle. Sometimes it's hard to see for a moment, but he's melting the backing on first one side, pressing it firmly into place, then doing the same thing on the other side. Then, again, he'll use heat and the little roller to seal all the edges. Along exposed flashing, use edge clips to finish the vinyl edge. You just trim them with tin snips or a utility knife where required. Anywhere the vinyl's edge is exposed, not heat welded or clipped, you should apply caulking. That includes up underneath where the vinyl meets the siding. The installer has chosen to use transition bars. Not essential, but a good idea, especially when renovating over an inhabited living space as this deck is. You'll measure and mark them, then cut them with snips or a saw. Dab each screw hole with caulk, then screw them into place. The transition bars hold the short end of the vinyl in place where it runs up the wall into the siding. It's not a bad idea to run a bead of caulk where the edge strip meets the vinyl, just for an added measure of waterproofing as well. Now some specialized techniques. Stairs are done one tread at a time. You'll cut the vinyl so that it overhangs each end about 3 inches or 8 centimeters and goes around the tread with about an inch of overlap.
We have pre-glued the vinyl. We'll glue each wood surface as we come to it.
Flip back over again. This will be the underside of the tread because it'll have the seam on it.
By the way, we use lumber for this demo, but you might want plywood or some other product that won't crack or warp.
Andrew turns it around here just to make it easier for him to weld the seam. The same welding procedures as we saw with the deck. He'll come back again in a minute and seal the exposed seam. This is important. You'll notch the vinyl overhang like this and on the underside of the stair tread so that it looks like this. Now tuck in the ends. Ultimately, you will glue and weld the vinyl so that it's folded over onto the underside, a lot like you'd wrap a Christmas present. Glue, of course, but he'll use heat as well to get a better, tighter fold. All the exposed seam edges will need to be finished with the welder and the roller too, so the wood inside is completely sealed and protected from the elements. And of course, you'll do the same thing for the other end of the tread. Now, when it comes to installing the tread on the stringers, use angle brackets like this, 2 on each stringer, 4 per tread. Here's what to do if you have a deck with a post. Make sure the glue extends a few inches up the post. That gap in the plywood is just big enough we'll want to cover it with a small piece of flashing. Now, with the vinyl folded up against the post, we make a cut with a notch at the base. You'll want to end up with a point on all 4 sides of the post, including the side in which the vinyl's cut. Again, the knife with the blade retracted is a handy tool to fit the corners. Now you cut off the points, leaving only a 1/3 or a 1/2 inch of vinyl going up the post. Now, as you go to seal the cut from the post to the edge, notice he's pulled